All right, and then we will go live, and this should take a second, but then it'll get us going. Fantastic. All right, there we are. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We are excited. I am pumped because we have a phenomenal guest for you this morning, Mr. Mark Sr., who I'll introduce in just a moment. And for those of you who are joining us, again, just welcome. Thank you for taking the time out. I am trying to make sure that this is going live for our folks on the stream. So give me one moment here. And we will have that up and running in just a moment. But nonetheless, let me go ahead and share a little bit about who we or what we're doing. We've got the Power of One Degree. So thank you guys for joining us. Drop your questions and everything you've got here on our chat when you have a minute, and you'll certainly be able to ask some questions. You'll be able to interact with us once we get that live going, and it'll be fun. So forgive me as I'm trying to get that live going, but it may be something that we post later. All right. So welcome everyone again. Thank you guys to all of our teammates that's here today. We've got not just myself, of course, I'm Jonathan Romero, but we've got a team here at Movement Bank that is always looking out for your best interest. And we are just thrilled that you'd carve out a little bit of time to partner with us and just join us today as we gather and talk about the power of one degree. So you're probably, if this is your first week joining us, you might be saying to yourself, hey, what is this power of one degree? What is that all about? And let me tell you, what if I told you that the most successful people don't do 10x the work, right? They're not doing 10 times more work. They're just shifting 1 degree in their approach, which is yielding 10x, 20x, 100x the results. And you'd probably ask yourself, well, what in the world is that 1 degree? I want to know all about it. Well, buckle up, because this is week 2 of our 5-week series of the power of 1 degree. We're going to continue to dive into the 5 laws of stratospheric success based on the Go-Giver proven model, and you're going to receive applicable principles to build a framework of service, value, and authenticity in your business, and hear from other folks that are represented in the top 1% of their respective industries and how they're doing life. Last week, we had the law of value, and the law of value was quite simple. It was we actually heard from Mae Dodson. So as you recall, she shared about building the muscle of saying yes to helping others, saying yes to stepping out of her comfort zone and just being there in a time of need, even when it wasn't convenient or otherwise that comfortable. But through that, she's been able to build relationships. She's been able to see how that's paid dividends in her own life as she leads in both business and in her personal life. And one of the things that I loved about our interview with Mae last week was how she said that she's a collector of people, of relationships. And it just highlights so much that when you appreciate others, your value appreciates, right? So when you appreciate others, your own value appreciates. And with that comes the law of value that says your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than what you take in payment. So this week, we have the law of compensation, and I am joined by our guest, Mr. Mark Mason Sr. Mark Sr. is, when I was thinking about the law of compensation, this is who I wanted to join us for this, because I knew right away that Mark would just he already embodies this. He's just proven this over his career and his life. And And I can't wait for you guys to get some of the wisdom he's going to impart today. But I know that Mark Sr. is not the kind of person that's going to brag about himself that much. So I'm going to do it for him. And as I introduce him, I'll give you a little bit of background about him. Mark Sr. started his first business at the age of 14 and purchased his first investment property soon after at the age of 18. He's owned Subway sandwich shops, a marble manufacturing business. He's got an ice cream shop, a wedding venue, currently owns over 160 rental properties, including commercial real estate and all the other kinds. And the real crux of what Mark Sr. has gained a significant amount of expertise in terms of the business world is owning and running retail automobile dealerships, right? So this particularly in the Carolinas and primarily focused in the Midlands, where you got Lugoff Toyota, Lugoff Ford, Lugoff Chevrolet, Buick GMC, Volkswagen, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. I mean, you name it. And this is someone who was born to be an entrepreneur. So welcome, Mr. Mark Sr. How are you today?
Fantastic. Thank you. You're overly kind, by the way.
Well, we're just barely scratching the surface because you've got so much wisdom and just a lot of life experience, right? Starting your own business at the age of 14 would have been the catalyst for what we now can look back on on a very long career of business ownership and leadership. And so just take me back to the very beginning. I mean, what inspired you at the age of 14 to start your own business?
Well, I don't know if there was an inspiration there. So my father had a furniture store. My father was an auctioneer, and very early in life, I enjoyed being in those businesses. So when I was 14, we decided to open a consignment antique store, and it did very well. But Jonathan, interesting. You and I have known each other for a lot of years. Okay, actually went to school with Mark Jr. and Ray. So it's good to see the success that you've had, and I'm proud of you for that. But I believe God gives us unique talents and gifts, and I think He instills them in us. And if we can find those gifts, I think things have a tendency to almost fall in place, for lack of a better word. I can't hear you, Jonathan. No volume.
Thank you. All right. So that's a great beginning, right? That kind of gets it's the jump starter, so to speak. It's the spark plug. And through that, then you went on to own, several other businesses, and I'm sure learning a lot of life lessons along the way. I think what I've learned in my personal journey, and still very, very young and wet behind the ears in this, is I've learned the most through challenges and adversity. And I'm sure as a young entrepreneur, you probably had your fair share of those challenges and just roadblocks or, interactions that you wish you could have handled differently. I don't know, you name it. What are some of those challenges that you feel like were these kind of milestones along the way that you can look to and see how they've shaped, who you are today and how you lead today?
I definitely think we learn more from our failures than do our successes, unfortunately. And if we have enough wisdom in us to at least be retrospective and look back, we start to recognize that there were characteristics and things within us that we had to modify. In business, the last thing you want to have is greed and materialism. And when you're young, it's all about the money. As you grow older, you start realizing it's not about the money, it's about the people and the culture. But sometimes those lessons only come from having done all the things wrong, so you can at least acknowledge that you were wrong and you can make the necessary changes.
That's so good. I was this kind of a detour here, but I was on the phone with a very successful business owner just this morning, who is in the process of purchasing an investment property and kind of diversifying a lot of his wealth. You know, he owns and he runs a business that does extremely well. And he said, you know, the reason that I want to do this is so that I can spend more time with my family. And one of the things that I love about how you've operated in business over the years, just from the outside looking in, is, you know, it's always been a family business, but it's also always been a family affair, right? And I see how you've incorporated your success and not just encapsulated that around you, but you've found ways to bring everybody in your family or other folks in your family into the picture. And so when you speak about the people and how it's more about culture and that sort of thing, I mean, that's just another one of those that I see in how well you've kind of journeyed. And so speak to that a little bit. Like, what, you know, was that a goal of yours from the very beginning, is to kind of build a business to help other folks in the family? Or you just, you know, kind of fell into it, say, raise your hand, I need some help, who can come help me? Kind of, what did that vision look like as you were starting to build your businesses?
Well, the perfect life balance is a fallacy. There is no perfect life balance. Okay. It's a continuous struggle to try to make sure that you put your priorities in place. But Rhonda and I, my wife of 45 years, and I know you know Rhonda well. Okay. We always prayed about and wanted to have a dealership of our own, so it could be a family business and a generational business that we could hand down. Now, we've been very blessed to go far beyond what my dreams were. You know, leave us to God. He'll surprise us every time, and give us more than what we really deserve. But to answer your question, no, it wasn't planned. Yes, we always said that if we got a dealership, it would be literally by a God gift, because it was so expensive and so difficult to get these dealerships. But God found a way. I mean, at the end of the day, we were blessed enough to have that avenue provided us. And then as we got it, we were able to bring the family along in it.
How fun. Oh, how fun, man. And you know, speaking to generations, I think that's something that when John Maxwell talks about this shift in mindset where, you know, and you alluded to it as well. It's you the younger you are, you kind of are reaching and reaching and reaching for success. And then you reach a point where you look around and you say, actually, what I'm looking for is significance.
Agreed.
And when you reach that point and you're looking to make an impact and you're looking to have significance, it changes everything. You start thinking much further ahead, like you said, generationally, and you're thinking about, how can I leave my family, my community, those around me? How can they be better because of my presence here, and not just now, but for years and ages to come? So, no, that's so good. You've had the pleasure of meeting and knowing some incredible business leaders yourself. I mean, you met, is it Fred DeLuca personally, the founder of Subway? You know, I'm sure in the auto business, you've met some of the top dealers in the nation. And I'm curious, just what kind of nuggets of wisdom did you pull and learn along the way from some of those that you were reaching for and hanging onto their coattails along the way?
Well, success and wealth comes with its own set of challenges and opportunities. But the one thing, regardless which individual you were talking about, okay, they recognized that it was people that made the difference, not the resource. It was all about the people. And they, quite frankly, Jonathan, the most successful people I've met are some of the most humble I've ever met. Okay, they're the ones that are least boastful. They're the ones that want to talk about themselves the least amount. Okay, and you know, and yes, we've been very fortunate. You know, we met Fred. I met Fred DeLuca in an airport of all things many, many years ago. Fred has since passed away. And Rhonda and I actually opened up the 500th Subway. Now I understand I think they have 50,000 a day. I mean, they unbelievable number. So we actually got in very early with them, but we were in a partnership, and there was a lesson to be learned there that I wasn't ready for a partnership. Let's put it that way. I wasn't prepared for the partnership, and so the biggest nugget that you take from, in my opinion, from people that have seen levels of success is they recognize it's not about them. They recognize that it is truly a culture. It's truly, I tell our team, we need to view and have a litmus test on anything we make, any decision we make. The litmus test is simple. Is it good for the consumer? Is it good for our consultants or our people? And is it good for the house? And if it's not good for all three, then we really don't need to be doing it. So when we started our management company, or the company that oversees things, it's called Wright Auto Group, RAGHT. And the reason for that is you've got to have the right people. You got to do the right things. It's about doing what's right, not what's convenient, not what's comfortable. Because quite frankly, doing what's right oftentimes is very uncomfortable, because it's the more difficult way of doing it, because this world will make things difficult for you. But it was interesting. So the break I got in the car business, and I had some tremendous mentors in the car business, but the one break I got in particular was Mr. Keffer, Dick Keffer. Matter of fact, they have dealerships there in Charlotte, many of them. And Mr. Keffer has since passed away, but he was truly a jewel, a gem. And the one thing that he set down when we were having our conversation, he said, when you are successful, the only thing I ask is that you pay it forward. You do it for someone else. I don't know how many people he put in the car business, 30, 40 people. And he was doing buyouts back in the 70s and 80s when it wasn't even heard of. Okay. And his business model continues today. I mean, but he was a very behind the scenes philanthropist. He believed in giving, but didn't want any knowledge of it. And, a lot came out of that.
Oh man, it's so powerful. It speaks so much to exactly what we're talking about, which is that 1 degree shift of instead of being a go-getter, being a go-giver, and how there's just this natural law of nature that deals with sowing and reaping, and this cycle that to your point, businesses can do things the wrong way and actually be quite successful. Am I right?
That's correct.
And but the idea behind doing things the right way gives you more longevity. Speak a little bit about that. What are, because doing things the right way has been a proven model, and I'm sure you've been around folks, or you've seen others that have done it the wrong way. And what does that look like?
Well, I've been the one to do it the wrong way. So, and I've learned from those ways. I will say one thing, generosity is a spirit. It is a habit. It's not a game plan. So I think people that think about that they're going to give to get is making a grave error. Okay. I think the heart has to be right. And if the heart's right and the generosity is there, and it's truly a spirit and a habit, and not an ulterior motive to get an end result, it pays dividends. When you're doing it to get, you're going to have a problem. It will not work, and so you have to recognize that as you go along. But to answer your question, you're right. There's a lot of people in business that do things the wrong way, and from a worldly perspective, they're very happy. Okay, but literally, it's sowing and reaping. And listen, if you sow into bad ground, eventually the storms are going to come and blow you away. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when you do things right, you can anchor those roots, and you can hold firm to things. I always have conversations with some of the younger guys, and debt is a necessity sometimes in business, but I think you have to limit debt. And you talked about doing things right. I think over leveraging is one of the biggest mistakes business people make. But the real mistake is, why did they leverage? And they leveraged because they were trying to get more. And, by leveraging, they saw a greater return in their minds, hence the greed and materialism. When without the leverage, it's going to take longer, but it's going to be more solid when it does take root. So, the biggest thing I see is that greed and that materialism and that constant want for more is a culture killer. It's an absolutely culture killer. And so I'm talking with a gentleman who several years ago, and he had decided to sell several of his car dealerships. And he looked at me and he said something. I thought about it a million times. He said, Mark, I hit a point in my life where I had to acknowledge I was blessed with enough. And he said it wasn't about constant growth. He said, yes, you want to constantly improve, but you don't need to have constant growth. Okay. And he said, most people can never come to peace with themselves and say, I have enough. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that.
Wow, that's powerful, especially in, today's culture that is just a little bit more, right? Just a little bit more. And coming to not just the realization, but I guess settling in with the comfort of saying that, what I have is enough, is powerful, because there's so much more to it, right? There's the time, given the example of my client that I spoke with just this morning. He's like, I want more time. I can spend and spin my wheels in a direction where I'm going to get more and more and more, but that's going to take me away from the time that I really want to dedicate to my family or my young child, or that sort of thing. And so yeah, that's a powerful realization.
So I've often been asked, when do you plan to retire?
Oh yeah.
And I give them the same answer: never. I said, no place in the Bible does it say we should retire. I said, but listen, I understand. So you have to go back and ask yourself, what does success look like? And ultimately, in my definition of that, is that we've got resources enough that we can bless others and still do what we want to do when we want to do it and have control over time. If we can reach that point, then we can prioritize our time and be able to do both, bless other people while simultaneously taking the time that we want to do the things that we want to do. And, again, I think the world has success mixed up. I think the world has success confused. Okay. So I think most people need to stop and ask themselves, why do they want to be successful, and what does success look like? And I think most can't answer it.
Yeah, and it's that dichotomy, that the success versus significance, right? And somebody in your position that employs a lot of people, you may even feel the weight of that. And I'm sure you have at times where it's like, what you have, you naturally want to create more opportunities. You see what that's done for the people that you've been able to guide and to to bring up in the business and to help promote even.
Right.
And so putting a cap on that almost feels difficult, I'm sure.
Right.
But speak a little to that about the culture inside of your companies and how you balance internal versus external client facing and that sort of thing.
Well, our growth today is strictly predicated upon how we can grow our people. I mean, and obviously our growth is, and the pace of that growth is going to be dictated by the people we can develop and bring along. So inside of our businesses, we have operating partners so that we bring them in. And quite frankly, they run the businesses. I mean, we're there for them. We're there as a resource, be it financial, spiritual, or from an advice standpoint. But to grow, and again, Jonathan, it goes back, and you and I had this conversation early in your career, and I told you never to chase the money. Okay. And that would be my advice to everybody. I mean, if you're chasing the money, you're going to lose the race. You know, you want to find that passion, you want to find that gift that's been laid in you, and then you want to be the very best at it. And if you do, the money will follow. Okay. You won't have to worry about the money. It will be there. But to answer your question, the balance comes from being able to attract and then train and retain people that can further your growth in a manner and a culture that you want to be represented by. You know, so again, I said it earlier, growth for growth's sake is very dangerous. Okay. No, none of us want to go backwards. But at the same time, we can take oftentimes what we have in our hands and become better at it, and actually grow internally that way instead of externally going out and buying more.
You know, if you get really good at something, if you're really gain the expertise and you're looking to add value, you're a master of your craft, and the money will follow. And you hit the nail on the head. I'll never forget that. I had the pleasure of working for Mark Sr. for half a day, and it has marked me for life. So that one half day
Hopefully
experience,
positively.
it was absolutely positive. I was fresh out of college. In fact, I graduated college on Saturday and started my first day on the job Monday morning. And I was so excited. I got to go up there and be a part of the team huddle and just experience the morning and the morning meeting and everything. And it felt like I was in an elite locker room. Honestly, it felt like I was a part of this group that was just the best of the best, kind of like the 300 Roman soldiers. And I just remember walking through that, and at the same time having this tug in my spirit that was like, oh, you know what? There's something in Charlotte. There's something in Charlotte. And I didn't even know why, because I was so excited. I'd looked forward to that for months to get started in my professional career and getting to learn and kind of flying under your wings and just being a part of that group. And you're right, man. I just remember halfway through the day, I had to come and sit with you and had one of the toughest discussions and conversations of my life, and saying, I don't know what it is, but I just feel like, there's something back there. And I was just sharing that story with a buddy of mine recently, and I was just telling him about how gracious and how loving and how humble you were, and that you were just encouraging me. And you told me exactly what you shared. You said, hey, you know what? It's not about the money. Don't try to chase the money. It's just be really good at something. And when you are, that money will follow, and you'll see that. And so, man, that's just it. It's been one of those things that has been just a marking moment for me, that I so appreciate.
But you followed your spirit. You followed your gut instincts. I say your spirit, okay? Because at the end of the day, okay, as much as you want to be there, that's not where God wanted you, okay? Mm-hmm. We've got to make sure that we don't restrict God's blessings on us because of our own fears or our own concerns about the immediate, because quite frankly, that conversation, if you remember, you had no idea where you were going to go or what you were going to do. I mean, it was an open book. It was like, I have no idea, but I said, well, you will be just fine. And you've done better than fine.
Well, I appreciate that. And a lot of that is birthed just out of that short discussion. And if nothing else, I now look back on that and see the intentionality of how that half day had to happen in my journey, right? I needed that exchange, and just to be able to sit and for you to have the opportunity to impart that wisdom on me, which I'm so thankful for.
But Jonathan, you used the word journey a minute ago. This is a journey. And by the way, the journeys can shift and change as you go through. I mean, I've had 40 whatever it is, 48 years of business experience. Okay. And the number of different journeys that I've gone down have been significant. Okay. So one of the advices I would give young people is lighten up on yourself. Don't be so critical. Recognize the fact that you're not conquering the world overnight. Get focused, have passion, try to be the very best you can be. And that's including person and career. Okay. And try to limit the mistakes. You're going to make them, and that's perfectly fine. Matter of fact, you want to make them. Okay. But you don't want to repeat them.
That's so good. Yeah. Make every mistake. Just make it once. Right?
You've heard that, haven't you? Yes.
Yeah, that's it. I love it. I love it. Yeah,
Become the fear of the immediate.
yeah. So we have a good comment in the chat there about not restricting God's blessings for the fear of the immediate. Yeah, and that was a marking moment because you're right. And that's a part of the story I forgot to share with a friend that I was telling last week, that I was walking out of there not knowing where I was going to go. I said, I've got nothing else lined up. I've been preparing for this day for months. I knew it, and yeah, that was quite the quite the leap of faith. But oftentimes that's what we're called to, and it's just it's just being able to say yes, being able to say yes. So that's so great. And you were also touching on how you're focused now on building people, building those that are a part of the organization. That's something that we strive to do so much, not just on our team, but the company that we are affiliated with at Movement. It's just all about building people and loving them, not just for their professional expertise and gifts and talents, but also how can we, cover all areas of finances and helping them steward their finances appropriately. How can we help them and come alongside of them in a challenging journey in life? When you have 300 employees, I'm sure somebody's going through something,
All the time.
right?
It's not always about building as much as it is about preparing, because life is going to bring challenges. Life is going to bring obstacles. Okay. Life, and are we prepared to meet those challenges and those obstacles when they come along? Are we anchored, ideally, okay, in God? Are we anchored in a philosophy and a belief that when those challenges come along, we don't fall by the wayside? Because they're coming. I mean, trials and tribulations come in life. Okay. No one has lived a uneventful or life without trials. It hasn't happened. The real winners, in my opinion, are the ones that understand that on this journey, we are going to go through valleys, but the key word that we're going to go through them. We will get to the other side. The question is, when we get to the other side, what are we going to look like? What are we going to look like? So, in thinking about this, driving in this morning, Jonathan, I thought about something I said to one of my granddaughters. I said, at the end of the day, it's interesting if we give people 2-word phrases and ask them in three to describe you. How do they describe you? I mean, is it, in my case, I'll paraphrase myself. Is it car dealer, family man, godly person? What are those 2-word descriptions that people don't really have to think about? When someone says Jonathan, what do they really think? And that's what we want to get to. We want to get to the point that they're thinking the way we want them to think from the standpoint, from a godly perspective. Okay. The last thing you want to have them think is greedy individual, careless, thoughtless. There's things that with words we don't want affiliated with us.
Yeah, that's so good. And that's why I really enjoy this journey of the power of 1 degree, this series that we're doing, because they say that the average person has 85,000 thoughts per day, and surprisingly 95% of those thoughts are the exact same thoughts that they had before. In fact, we actually navigate it even ahead of time. We're saying, I'm going to make sure I prepare this and this and this for tomorrow, so that the next day you can come right back to that and say, okay, this is what I expected. This is what I prepared for myself. And when you do that over and over, you're building a repetition, you're building a muscle. Much like our guest last week, Mae Dodson, was talking about how she had to build a muscle of just saying yes. And at an early age, she just started saying yes, yes, yes to new encounters and relationships and helping people and that sort of thing. And that's just that 1 degree shift of creating a habit, right? Of creating a habit and a pathway of how you're thinking that says, I'm going to, do it this way. And when you think about doing it from that anchor of saying, I'm going to go in this direction and I'm just going to go 1 degree. And again, it may not feel like you're making much of a difference, but when you get further and further out over time, you find that those decisions that you start gravitating towards day after day after day have now started pointing you in a direction that all started with just this 1 degree of a separation of your thinking. And that's valuing others, right? It's not self centered, but it's self-giving, and how powerful that can be over time, specifically over a career, and more importantly, as a leader, and not only a leader, but a leader in the marketplace, where you really do have the ability to impact people's livelihood, to impact, how they're, the life that they're living, the decisions they're making, the neighborhoods they're moving into, the purchases they're making, these things that come along with our day-to-day life, right? And so it's a heavy burden, and it's a great calling that you've been called to as a lifelong entrepreneur.
Well, for whom much is given, much is expected. Okay. And we are blessed to be a blessing. There is a reality that we should be blessing other people's lives as we go through ours.
Oh man, absolutely. Well, what would you say, Mark Sr., that you would leave for any other words of wisdom for a young entrepreneur, or, particularly we have, our network is built up of a lot of real estate agents who are building a business and a book of business, a lot of, direct to consumer type of exchanges, and these principles all just fall so well aligned with our business and the law of compensation that says, your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them.
Absolutely. So there is not a single individual that is self-made. So we got to get that off the equation. Okay. So you can bring the discipline, the work ethic, you can bring the commitment to the table, but it's going to be a lot more than just that. Okay. And at the end of the day, you do have to have your focus correct. I mean, it goes back to the litmus test. If it's not right for the consumer, not right for the employee or consultant, and not right for the house, the question is, why are you doing it? And recognize the fact that you can't function in fear. Fear is a terrible demotivator, and you got to accept the fact that fear will come along the way and you're going to have to conquer it. My wife and I, we did not leave Indiana until we were 36 years old, 35, 36 years old, had been there our entire life. And when we made the decision to move to North Carolina, it was a massive move. Our entire family on both sides had never left Indiana at that point in time. Now they're all down here. But, we had to overcome the fear factor, and we had to believe that regardless of what occurred, God had us in his hands, and that everything was going to ultimately work out for the best. And it has.
Oh man. Well, that's incredible. It's a great journey, and just, again, knowing you guys and knowing your family and being surrounded by you guys, I've always just enjoyed all of your wisdom. I remember I was one of those guys that asked you, that said, gosh, when are you going to retire? What do you think? When are you going to hang the boots up? And you just said, I'm having too much fun. I'm having
Right.
too much fun. Not happening anytime soon, right?
Listen, if you enjoy what you do, it's not work.
That's exactly right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Well, Mark Sr., we appreciate your time with us today. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I'm glad we were able to get this back on. I was a little worried there for a minute, but I am so glad that you've taken some time out to just to share a lot of the nuggets of wisdom that you've had over these last 60 plus years, and particularly a lot of those being a business owner and leading people and leading others. And so we're just appreciative of all that you've done to help build others up along the way and pass along some of these golden nuggets of wisdom. So thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, and I'm proud of you and your journey.
Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon.
Have a great day. Thank you.